screenings and Q&As with filmmakers, we're continuing the spirit here by having a great panel of business executives and industry-leading professionals to share with us their insight in U.S. and China relationship and content creation, which is the second panel after this. We would appreciate you stay for the second panel as well. Okay, so I want to start by giving a little introduction to the moderator herself before we get into all the discussions with panelists. I am June. I currently work with Loeb & Loeb as an entertainment attorney. I was born and grew up in China. This panel, the business panel, is also co-hosted by China Film Insider, which is a industry-leading trade publication that has a focus on U.S.-China entertainment relationship. All right, so here's the most exciting part. I'm going to introduce the panelists today. This is Mike Gabrieli. He's the Chief Creative Officer from Arclight Films, which is a production and distribution company that's headquartered in Los Angeles and also in Sydney. It has offices in China as well. Welcome, Mike. Next to Mike is Randy Greenberg, a former executive at Universal Pictures. Randy is currently an independent producer. He recently got famous again for being the executive producer on the co-production The Meg. Thank you for coming. We're going to ask more questions about that. Next to Randy is Shan Lee. Shan is currently the Senior Vice President of Production at SK Global. SK Global is a merged entity of Ivanhoe Pictures and Cine Kimmel Entertainment. Thank you for coming, Shan. By the way, SK Global is a company that produced Crazy Rich Asians. We're going to have more follow-up questions on that as well. Next to Shan is Rong Chen. The correct way to pronounce his name is Chen Rong in Chinese. So Chen Rong is currently the Senior Vice President of Perfect World Company, and he's also the CEO of Perfect World Pictures USA. So Perfect World Company is really a company that has Perfect World Pictures and also other businesses, which is well known for its gaming business that is industry leading. We're going to have more questions for Jean coming up. The next one, now it's a simple one for me. This is my friend, Bennett. Say hi to everybody.
I know nothing about anything.
He's only here because he's my friend. Not really, so I'm sure many of you actually know Bennett. He has been in the industry for a very long time. He's the Executive Vice President of East West Bank. He's overseeing the corporate banking group, and he has participated in many U.S.-China co-productions, such as Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, and many others alike. Welcome, Bennett. Okay, since Bennett is my oldest friend on the stage.
Is that by age?
Oh, I'm not judging that. So I will give my first question to Bennett. As many of us know here, there's currently a trade war going on between US and China. And we all know in China, the government has recently had a few restrictions on outbound investment and also on the domestic film companies' tax practice. So Bennett, since you've been in the industry as a banker for 25 years, and as a banker, you're always on the front end of a co-production or co-financing project. Would you be able to shed some light on this topic in terms of where we are between the US and China? Can you give us some thoughts on that?
So where we are, well, I think right now we're in Los Angeles.
Great.
Okay. Seriously, thank you. This is a terrific panel because it's great to be on with friends, and it's a Sunday afternoon, and I'm really glad because pretty much everybody here we go way, way, way back with. So thank you for that. I don't want to say I've been a banker for a long time, but I was a banker when we financed the introduction of the wheel. So that was that worked better about 30 years ago. Yeah, So I guess we're in the middle of some tensions, and this has been a pretty interesting topic because I think from the U.S. side, there's a lot of speculation. Is this really the right way of going about things? So I think, not to get way political here or too political, but you've got a president who's very polarizing and has a very unique style that it takes away from, are these the right policies or not? And because the style is so bad. And it's like all of us are living on that Apprentice game show, wondering if we just got fired or something, we're going to get yelled at on TV. So I have no idea if what happens is going to be good for both countries or not. All I know is that the style sucks, right? So what have we seen from all of this is, we go back a couple of years, and there were some currency issues in China because there was a flight of capital looking for investment offshore. And so that, I think, was kind of like the first domino that fell. And the next thing, I think, was scrutiny on aggressive buying. If it was European football teams, if it was American almost studios or some types of American production companies, where the valuations were very, very high. And so I think the government's like, look, we got to take a much closer look into what happens. I know that the government's very supportive of M&A activity offshore, but entertainment is an industry that's going to have greater scrutiny right now. And on top of that, with all the trade war tensions, companies in China, the last thing they want to do is go to the State Administration of Foreign Exchange, go to SAFE, and ask for permission to wire money out. And so one of the phenomenons that we're seeing is even on Chinese language productions that are shooting offshore, maybe in Hong Kong or in Malaysia, Australia, Chinese language, Chinese crew, Chinese cast. They're still scared to ask for permission to wire that money offshore. And so that's creating, I think, a lot of stress in the financial systems.
Understood. Right. So on that note, I want to comment on something that Ron was leading 2 years ago. He was actually made a very smart move that he led the investment of a co-financing deal on a slate of 50 films within 5 years with Universal Studios. So, Ron, was that part of the strategy where you actually foresee what's coming next, or is there anything behind that move, that financial investment in the slate of films that you can share with us today?
So first of all, thank you for moderating this panel, and thank you for everybody to come on Sunday to listen to what we say. I think most people don't know, even though we did the transaction with Universal in 2015, 16-ish, as a company, we actually looked into film slate financing as early as 2010. And we were looking at the best in class during that time. We were looking at Dune Capital, Legendary, we looked at the Village Roadshow. So those are all best in class deals at the time. And at the time, we decided that wasn't the right time for us as a company to get involved. And fast forward or slow forward 5 years later, when the opportunity came up, although it looks like we did a massive transaction in 7 months and a cross-border deal, but in fact, it took us close to 6 years to come to that point. So that's just a concrete example, kind of counter to what you probably see in the last few years, which things are happening much too fast. Okay, so I think I was quoted the other day at the Asian Society panel saying, the last couple of years, it's almost like driving 80 miles per hour in a parking lot or in a public school zone, which is just not safe. Okay, so because the panel's topic is there a speed bump? Well, if you're driving 80 miles per hour in a parking lot, and if you're not behaving responsibly, yes, somebody better put in that parking lot speed bump, right? So it's now actually 2018. I think it's the best year ever for this business. Most healthy. All the things that put into place are for the better and long-term growth, healthy growth of the company. A lot of the problem is because of the capital market, and especially in China, pumping into this business, where you cannot really be pumped up too fast. Things take time. It takes time to develop a script. It takes time to develop a company. It takes time for the industry to grow. So much of the capital in China is like, okay, so I'll give you the money. When do you have product? I'll give you the money. How much you're going to generate in terms of profit? They're going to promise to me. In Chinese, we call it 对赌. Okay, that's very irresponsible. You're asking somebody to promise you profit. That's because you don't really know how this underlying business really can generate. You're asking somebody else to promise you as a venture capitalist. That's you being lazy. That shouldn't be the way it is. So anyway, it's a much long topic. I'll be here for after the panel, and I'll be here. I'm very interested in the mixer that you guys have every month. So we can talk about this, offline.
Yeah, just give me a little product placement here, right? So we're Los Angeles Film Festival. We're organized by a nonprofit organization called Chinese in Entertainment. So we host monthly mixers over the year. We hope to see you guys again at our mixers. I'm sure Ron would be happy to join us many other times. Just Ron, we're all in LA. I'm sure everybody cares about safe driving. We're going to talk about that. So up next is Shen. So you actually used to be studio executive as well, and you recently decided to join SK Global. Of course, after the production of Crazy Rich Asians, but we're still very interested in the follow-ups on that film as well, which I will bring the questions later. But just in terms of your new role in SK Global, I think you have been constantly assigned a role to really focus on Asia-focused films, which is also globally minded. Can you talk about what's up next and you're looking for, and what type of projects you're looking to work on?
Absolutely. I think, first of all, I have to say that even though Crazy Rich Asians, before my tenure was at Global, I have been part of this movement of just really promoting Asian content for the global audience, and I'm just thrilled to be part of this. Right now at SK Global, my role is to really enhance our slate of Asian-focused, Asian-related global slate of either film or TV projects. Personally, I feel that there have been this underrepresentative and this voice that hasn't been heard from all the Asian filmmakers, from Asian population in general, in Hollywood for so many years. And now, because of the success of Crazy Rich Asians, the door is finally open, and we will be able to let this voice be heard. So this is the best time to do this, and I couldn't be happier to be part of this. We want to be the success of this and continue this endeavor to find really good universal stories from the Asian population and to really tell it to an audience across the globe.
Thank you. We certainly hear a lot of optimism from all of your speeches, so I'm not going to switch to Mike. I'm going to skip you for a moment. So Mike, certainly ArcLight Films, as we know, is a sales agent that really promotes international films, and you guys have had a very strong presence in China for quite a while. So having operations in China, here in the US, is scenic, right? So what would you think about the current challenges, and how does that affect your business operations in general?
Well, I just want to say that I want to get a box of popcorn and get out in the audience and ask these guys questions. It's an amazing panel that you put together, Jim. I agree with everything that's been said before, and I think that I think the challenges now, to kind of piggyback on what Ron said, is that I think this is a great thing long term. I think this is a healthy constriction for the benefit of the industry, and I think what it's done is it's created a bit more discipline and scrutiny in the process of developing projects that are more organically aligned with, in our case, we do a lot of work in China, but it's looking at China, but also from a global perspective. And the gold rush that we've seen in the last few years felt irresponsible. It felt like you were going 80 in a 20-mile-an-hour zone. I think that's such a great analogy for it. And that this discipline now is creating more opportunities and healthier opportunities to collaborate. So for us, what we're doing, we're finding more projects that are but organically designed to cross cultural boundaries and be universal stories with maybe a Chinese component to it, or a Chinese story that works that way.
Was that part of your China Light, Eastern Light initiative?
Well, I've been with ArcLight for 11 years. Randy, ironically, was one of the first people I worked with when I first joined ArcLight, and on a project. But ArcLight started out with 3 divisions. One of those divisions was Eastern Light. And Eastern Light was designed from a foreign sales perspective, sell Chinese films to the world market outside of China. So we were uniquely placed very early on in knowing all the players and working in the Chinese industry. I joined the company about 11 years ago, and it was at the time I was brought in to kind of ramp up the production side of the company. And it was just perfectly aligned with the growth of the industry and the beginning of kind of international co-productions in China. So it was a happy accident, and my bosses had the foresight to see that when I joined the company, there was talks of China being the biggest, bigger than the US by this date. And now the conversation is, when you see films that perform in China, that the conversation is that it will be half of the world box office in the not too distant future. So it's obviously these growing pains that we're seeing right now are for the benefit of the long-term industry. We produced a number of Chinese co-productions. ArcLight is an Australian company, which Australia and China have had, over 40 years of economic kind of collaboration. So they have a pretty healthy relationship. So we utilize that governmental relationship to do international co-productions between the 2 countries.
Thank you, that's very helpful. Now it's Randy. My question to you is very simple, actually. Do you agree what they have just said? That is not my question, just kidding. But Randy is the one who said a great panel would create certain debates, so I'm happy to welcome that disagreement. But also, Randy has been the executive producer for the very successful co-production, The Meg. So why don't you talk to us about, also you're being an independent producer working with both markets. So I would love to hear, what you think about where the 2 markets are, and also what you think are the challenges that the Meg actually has overcome than many other co-productions before, because that's the highest grossing co-production, US-China co-production so far.
Okay, so thank you for having me on the panel. I'm in very esteemed company and honored and humbled to be sitting here. The Meg has become the largest or the biggest US-Chinese co-production ever, just surpassing Kung Fu Panda 3. The issue of co-productions, first of all, you have to understand, the issue of co-productions, in the end, it's all about money. It's not about getting released in China, it's not about being imported into China, it's all about money. It's, can you get a larger box office, can you get a larger percentage of the box office out of the Chinese market back to the distributor, back to the production company. In order to do that, you have to adhere to certain rules that the Chinese government applies. And in doing that, you have to be very respectful to the culture, to the people, and to the opportunity. And to be perfectly frank, most of the previous co-productions were either Chinese movies trying to become worldwide Hollywood movies, or Hollywood movies trying to make themselves opportunistically into a Chinese movie that can be into the marketplace in China and to get more money. And with varying results, but nothing that seemed either, as Mike said, organic, or as we like to say, organic and synergistic to the opportunity. With the Meg, we started from the very first premise, which is that create the Chinese characters and the culture of the Chinese characters first, and then put it into the project. The Meg is based off of a book from 22 years ago called Meg, written by Steve Alton. So it's a piece of IP that we like to say in the business that already exists. 2 studios tried to make it. That was Hollywood Pictures, which is Disney, and New Line, which is part of Warner Brothers, tried to make it for several years. Hollywood tried to make a family movie, and New Line tried to make a horror movie. Neither obviously were successful. The rights reverted back to the filmmaker, or sorry, to the author, and then Belle Avery, who is the main lead visionary producer of the Meg, picked up the rights, and she wrote the first 2 drafts of the screenplay that ultimately garnered the interest of Gravity Pictures, and then Gravity was in. We brought it back to the United States, where several other studios were interested, and ultimately Warner Brothers wound up with the rights worldwide. But we started with the premise that the Chinese culture and the Chinese characters were the most important part. If we were going to be a co-production, that's what we had to get right. And we spent a long time getting it right. We had to go through all the various bells and whistles with SART and the various sort of Chinese governmental organizations had to put their stamp of approval every step of the way. Every time we changed a word on the script, they had to agree. And what I can tell you is this: there were absolutely no changes to any subsequent script that we gave to the government. There was no change to the cuts of the movies. There was nothing. We didn't have to compromise one bit in order to get the movie finished and ultimately in as a co-production. And that's a testament to the creatives, both from China and from the States, working together to get it right before we ever submitted it. I think the landscape of co-productions, just as Chinrong said, is fertile. I think the business is fertile. We've gotten through this irrational exuberance over the last 6 or 7 years that could not have gone on any longer. You know, Hollywood is sadly notorious for ripping off various countries for money along the way. And it's important and I think appropriate that the government put on a filter so that both the Hollywood side of the business and the Chinese side of the business couldn't make stupid deals, which is sadly too much of what was going on, and you could see it. So I think that co-productions moving forward will be far more opportunistic and synergistic and financially rational on both sides of the equation.
Do you think is there anything very unique to the Meg in terms of the topic, the theme of the film that makes it more globally appealed, or is there any other particular reason that make the Meg more successful than the others?
I think that what made the Meg I think that what works is that it could have been a New Zealand movie, it could have been a UK movie, it could have been a movie done in French. It was really more about humankind versus, you know, a creature that was never meant to be alive at the same time that humankind was. So we stayed away from, you know, there's no politics in the movie, there's no cultural issues. I mean, there are cultural issues that we play with amongst characters, but never cultural issues that divide us. And it's not an independent movie, and it's really a big studio, Hollywood studio movie. It was conceived to be that way, done as an independent movie. I mean, the majority of the money came out of China. The minority of the money came out of Hollywood, but we had global distribution through a Hollywood major studio outside of Greater China, where it was released by Gravity Pictures, which is a division of CMC, and they were the majority financiers. But it was really put together as an independent movie, and managed really as an independent movie, but released on a global scale.
Understood. Thank you. So I want to turn to Bennett. I think you're one of the people that worked
You
on.
actually have to turn to Bennett because I'm at the far end. You can't do it together.
Okay, yeah, I'm turning it to you. So yeah, I think you're one of the people in Hollywood actually works on a lot of US-China co-productions. So I think Randy gave us a great example about what could be a very successful co-production. Do you mind talking a little bit about the challenges actually about many other co-productions that did not really come to such a successful state in the end?
I think the great thing that Randy shared is, how the movie transcended. So if it was a quota movie, a buyout, co-production, what have you, I think it still would have been very successful in China. I think if it was wrong at Asian Society or somebody else, maybe it was Shen over at Asian World Film Festival, somebody was talking about that the success and failure of co-productions come down to the partners that you work with, right? So I'll give you an example. These are the two films that we've been associated with, both starring Jackie Chan. So that's kind of easy to talk about.
Great.
So one of the first ones that we did was a movie called Skip Trace that had Jackie Chan, Johnny Knoxville, that really nice lady whose name can't be mentioned. Okay, we'll do this again. Anyway, it was English language, shot all on location in China, and the movie did okay in China, right? But it came out at a time when there wasn't this great resurgence of local Chinese product that we've seen the last 2 years. And this was in 2016. US studio movies were dominating the landscape in China that summer, and most of the Chinese companies were kind of shifting to TV and making TV satellite dramas. And that's really kind of what was happening at that time. But if you look into the production, there was a lot of strife, a lot of problems. So the outside of China, the movie was financed in a way that Mike knows a lot about, pre-sales. And pre-sales equals completion bond. And completion bond with software that was in English language doesn't really mix well with Chinese speaking crew. And a lot of the finance directors, controllers are usually related to the chairman because that's where the money's going, right? And it just didn't work well. And you also have different styles. And so I think that was tough. I think things have changed a lot since then. But moving towards today, same company in China is making another Jackie Chan movie with John Cena. We can do a lot of John Cena jokes, but there's too many glazed faces over here. Anyway, they same thing, English language, shooting on location in China, and they decided, you know what, forget the whole co-production thing now, not because they didn't want to go through that process, they just didn't want to deal with it, they didn't want to bug the crew, let's just make this thing. Directors, American, let's just make this movie, and then after we're done making it, then we'll figure out how to monetize it internationally, which is something they really, really want to do. And it's not that that's the only way to do it, or the best way to do it is you look at the pieces you have together and what are the choices you want to make. I think Randy probably had a terrific experience, and his crew had an experience, but it was also a different lineup than some of the movies that I've talked about.
Right, totally. I do feel like the Chinese company role in the LAC is actually much bigger than many other films. And certainly the topic, the theme itself is more neutral to be produced. So I want to move to Rome Channel. So definitely Venice speaks about, they talk about finding the right partner if a US company is trying to work with a Chinese partner to do a co-production. I guess for you, it turns around a little bit on the reverse side for you to develop more films in Hollywood if that's your plan. So is there any strategy in terms of that, and also in terms of finding the right partner to work with? Where are your partners?
So we have two companies here in the United States. One is called Perfect Universe Investment that managed the $500 million deal with Universal, which is 50 movies, 5 years. Speaking about doing things too fast. This business, you really have to do it for a long term, okay? So 50 movie, 5 years is kind of the minimum we want to commit once we do something. Other than that company, we have another company called Perfect World Pictures USA that does development, producing, financing of content, English language for the global market. So our company in China will do Chinese language for the local market. That's our second business here. About partnerships. I think in general, it's not just a movie. There's a couple of things in our experience that's important. One is we like to be partners on things that each party brings value or added value to the table. We like to do business with people that we share the same vision with. It's very important. And we like to do business with people that we can trust each other. And at the very minimum, you need to be able to define the rules of engagement so we can trust each other to do business with. And on the way over here, purely by coincidence, I heard a story I want to share with you, and it has nothing to do with movie. So there's a family friend that has been doing huge semiconductor business in China, huge, to the point where the Chinese government will give them 40 billion RMB just to give them, not for a single share of equity, just give them. Because you know Chinese government is trying to grow the semiconductor business, right? So it's like grant, just give it. So that's how big they are. Part of the success of the company is the 7 founders, mostly engineers. They said, when we start this business many years ago, we need to set up some rules. The rules are, none of us can get divorced. If we get divorced, you're out of the company with no shares. Nobody get RNAP. Anybody who get RNAP, we find out mistress. If you have a mistress, you're out, no shares.
You're telling all of us, your partners here today.
Yeah. So if you think about that, that has nothing to do with what we're talking about in terms of movie, but there's a trust there that we have to build. There's rules of engagement, penalty involved. And for everybody, all 7 people to sign up, they share the same vision of the company. That's the story I want to share with you.
That's a great story, thank you. And
If you spend the counterfeit money, you're also out.
You're also out.
Yeah. Little plug for Donna, sorry.
just a little bit background, in case you don't know, I think Rome came from engineering background. That's why he know about the story problem. Just my little comment. But Rose, I think people here are also very interested about what Perfect World Pictures is going to do in terms of development production in the U.S. Because I know a lot of people, they have a Chinese background, they know Perfect World being a gaming company, but certainly we also have a great business, film business here. I know you guys did distribution of many U.S. films back in China. You also produced many Chinese local films. But in terms of U.S. films, which is English language films, what are your plans here that we can learn about?
So I really don't look at movies as art movie or commercial movie. I think it's purely a function of how big the market is for this movie relative to the budget you want to make it. As long as it covers, to me, it's a commercial movie. So on that front, I think we're looking at all kinds of projects from any stage of the life cycle it's in. So we look at a pitch, we look at something that's still a book, all the way to fully packaged. We're interested, as long as it's commercial. And it's commercial in the sense that I just defined. It's not science fiction, tentpole, Marvel, comic, no. So I have a much wider range of what a commercial product is. And in the end, if I could have a couple minutes, you have a great question about to the filmmaker.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, so I'll save for that.
Okay, I'll come back to you on that question, which I proposed. So now, Shane, certainly a lot of people are interested in Crazy Rich Asians. Actually, our organization organized an event, which is a screening event to go see Crazy Rich Asians together. So on that end, I understand you were, Crazy Rich Asians were produced before you came in, but certainly in the long term, you're going to produce more sequels to that, and you'll be looking for other IPs to work on. Since people have been talking about finding the right partner and also finding the right IP to work with. So can you tell us a little bit about how would you identify the projects that you would like to work on? And would that be English language or Chinese language, or is there any criteria on that?
I think that's a two-part question, so I'm going to answer the first part first, which is how do I identify the right partner? Before I joined SK Global, I have been with the studio for many years, working focused on primarily on Asian production. So I work a lot with local partners. China is a very difficult market. Since the time I started working in the market, I think up till now, it's been very difficult from many perspectives. First of all, storytelling is very different. You have to kind of decide if this is a film for the Chinese market or it's a film for the more like global audience. So that was a difficult first question that we always asked. And second is like there are so many different practices, like Randy was talking about, in terms of getting past certain practices, the censorship, as well as like legal practices, business practices. There are so many differences. So along the way, that will pose many different kinds of challenges. So finding a partner that you would trust, finding a partner that you would actually both have value propositions to bring to the table, finding a partner that you share the creative vision with is very essential, and that's the foundation of success in working in this co-production world that we all operate in.
Right. Just very curious in terms of Crazy Rich Asians getting into the China market, right? So it has a great box office here in the States. And we also know there has been some challenges, but now the release date has been set for China.
It's November 30th, if anyone is in China by that time.
Great promotion. I wasn't expecting that, but so is there any, part of that challenge that you would like to share with us? And we're very curious about, what are the potential obstacles for the film to get into China, or you don't think there is any issue with that?
First of all, that's Warner Brothers China's office that's been handling all that process, but I just want to say that the fact that it gets into China is a big success and a big victory that we should all celebrate. It's not because of all the sensitive things that people might think it is, and I have read a lot of speculations on that. I think the biggest reason is because there are only 34 quota that everyone is fighting for, and most of the time they would choose a film that has the biggest commercial potential in the market, and that most of the time equals, pictures like The Meg, even though that's a co-production, which requires no quota. But if we look at the 34 pictures that have been selected over the past few years, it's always been big tentpole films, like Marvel films, DC comic films. So it's already a big success that a romantic comedy is getting into China. And historically, we've always known that his romantic comedies perform very well in English language speaking territories, such as the US domestic market, UK, Australia, but internationally it's just not something that you would have a big expectation on. And the fact that we are already in it and we got this great release date and we're going to have an audience in China is something we're celebrating.
Right, I agree. Thank you. We'll have our friends in China go to see that movie.
Please.
So Randy, I'm not skipping you this time. So in terms of finding IPs, because you're an independent producer and you used to work in the studio, so I'm very interested to know how the other two roles differently work for you, and what type of IPs are you trying to find in the future if you're going to be an executive producer or producer?
So I'll find IP from anywhere. There was a great article in the Bloomberg magazine back in April about he was a mathematician who made $1 billion betting on the Macau, Hong Kong horse racing industry. And it's an amazing article, and I didn't get it. because some other production company paid a lot more money for it than I was willing to pay for it. But it was an amazing article, and it was an amazing, you could definitely see it as an Ocean's 11 type of movie, and an opportunity set in Macau and in Hong Kong. And I'm sorry I didn't get it, and I just gave somebody
Don't
else a
worry, it
plug.
takes 80
But-
years for the Mac to be produced.
Right, and it took 20 years for the Meg to get made, right? So you can find it anywhere. I mean, the author of Meg also wrote a book called The Loch, which is about the Loch Ness Monster, and that hopefully will be the next movie that producer Belle Avery and I will work on. And we have another book series called 18 Seconds from a New York Times best-selling author, George Schumann, and we were trying to work on at Fox with Shen. And we've had some really great original scripts that have come to us. Part of when you have a very successful movie, the scripts get better that come to you. And over the last 8 weeks, or 10 weeks, the scripts have gotten a lot better. So you can find it anywhere. But the way that I look at it is, I started as a publicist. I actually started in accounting at Warner Brothers, looking at the real numbers. And then I managed a movie theater and then was a publicist before being a studio executive. So I look at everything from a marketing standpoint of, how do I get you to leave your home and go to a movie theater and pay the price to sit in the theater? Because if you don't go to the theater, the movie's never going to be successful. So that's the biggest issue, is what inherently what's organically in the material that will make you leave your home, and go to the movie theater, where you have to sit next to complete strangers who may talk through the movie or have their cell phone out, and you don't want that. The more that happens, you don't want to go to the movie theater. It has nothing to do with what you see, but everything to do with the experience of going to the movie theater. So whatever it is that I, as an independent producer, am attracted to, has to be something that is really dramatic or very exciting, or something that you haven't seen before. So it really has to rise above, and that's a really high threshold. So I look through a lot of stuff, and most of the time I say no, and most of the time I don't even look at things that are sent to me that are unsolicited. I never look at. But if it comes to me from someone I know and trust, there's a certain layer of filter, I guess, that's gone through it. So I will certainly read something, at least the first 20 pages, and if I like it, I'll continue reading it, and if I don't, I will just pass on it and say thank you very much.
Right, so for whoever who's doing accounting, marketing, or publicist, you do have a bright future to be an independent producer.
Right. Well, let me add two things. That I also sat on the Greenlight Committee at Universal, and was part of the analysis committee at MGM before that. So I understand the economics of exactly what the studio is looking for. And when I look at material, it's always from that, is how can the investor make his or her money back? And if I don't think that an investor can make his or her money back, as an independent producer, I don't get paid. Let me say that again, and I tell this to my class, I teach at UCLA Extension as well, the business of entertainment. And I, as a producer, do not get paid until a movie goes into production. So I'm working for free for a long time before a movie ever gets made. So it has to really move me, and I have to know it's going to move a lot of people, including the financiers, and find a director and find the actors in order to put it all together to get to the starting line of getting paid. So you have to have a filter that's very thick, so that something ultimately that comes through it is really worth the time and effort that you're going to put into it.
Right, especially for someone like me, I need to give a second thought in becoming an independent producer. So for Mike, certainly I think ArcLight actually produced a very successful independent film called Bay 3D, and it made a very great Chinese box office. It's probably the most profitable Australian film in Chinese cinema so far. So what has that done right in terms of the IP traveling into a different market? And I'm sure you, as someone linking filmmakers with the sales agents, you always have to know what type of films you should break into, what type of markets, right? So I really appreciate you sharing some thoughts on that.
Well, I also want to just piggyback on a couple of things. We're talking about the Meg and we're talking about Crazy Rich Asians, which I love that my Chinese assistant, he and all his friends refer to it as CRA. Like, it's so successful that it now has its own acronym. They don't have time to say the whole name. I think what we're not counting on here, and I'll get to Bait in a second, but I think they're both great films. And you can't, like, we have tried, as a sales company, we reverse engineer projects a lot of times to the financing model and to the marketplace, and it's not the most organic way to do it. So we have shared creative elements with the Meg very recently on a film that didn't perform quite to the level that the Meg performed to. And it's a testament to, you also have to take credit for the fact that these are both really good movies. So there's something to be said for that. Bait was it was the first Australian-Singapore co-production. We did kind of what they call a dog leg and pulled in a Chinese co-production, and it was just a fun film. It was about a tsunami that hit the Gold Coast of Australia and flooded a shopping center with a pack of hungry tiger sharks. It qualified, it happens, all based on a true story. And what's interesting is that it came out during one of the holidays, one of the national holidays where only Chinese films could be in the box office. So it was up against Confucius, it was up against a number of other films. And if you're a 14, 15-year-old kid in China and you don't have Jaws in the lexicon of your film history, it's a great novelty. It was at the height of 3D, and it was a fun roller coaster ride. So it was a bit of a well-timed situation. We tried repeating that with the same director to a less fruitful situation. But I think what we're discounting is two things. One, I think Jason Blum says it, and Randy just touched on it, which is Blum always says that the film success is half of it is the film and half of it is how it's promoted, is how it's put into the marketplace. And I think that's really, really true. Your background probably speaks to that. And the other thing that you can't discount is that, I have a friend at Bona, and he said it the right way. As the Chinese industry was growing up, it was acting its age. So when it was 10 years old, it was acting like it was interested in what a 10-year-old would be interested in. And it's just gotten more and more sophisticated every year. So now these films that may have worked back in the day, the bar is set a lot higher.
The day, like 2 years ago.
Exactly, 2 years ago. And I think for us, when I look at Bait, like, I'm very excited we're doing a film now that's a disaster film I'll just give you the 2-second pitch. It's a flight from LA to Shanghai. Somebody leaves their Galaxy Note 8 in their carry-on. It gets checked under the cargo hold. Fire, Sully Sullenberger style water landing. The plane breaks in half. Half the passengers survive, and that's just the beginning of their problems. So it's a really organic, grounded, terrifying take in a disaster movie and a survival thriller that happens to have sharks. So we're trying to do a film that would have Chinese characters in it, that uses a very commercial concept that's relatable, and a fantastic young Aussie director that has a really good take on the material. It's finding those kinds of stories, and I think what we've done over the last few years is we're engaged with partners and with Chinese consultants very, very early on, and we've made the mistake in the past of trying to engineer for China as opposed to having the partners on very early. I also can't overstate how important your partner is. I think it's important in every part of the business, but in China, due to how unique how it's very culturally specific the way business is done, it's the most important thing is your partner in China, I feel. And we are being much more careful about who we partner with, when we partner with them, and how we can make that a really strong relationship early on. And that's it. I think it's also a really good opportunity to launch that ArcLight is also going to start selling semiconductors. So we're getting pretty heavily into the semiconductor business going forward. So that is something to keep an eye out for the semiconductor business.
I actually want to stress something, and Chen Long said it, and Mike said it as well. Forget the fact that choosing a partner in the film business. Choosing a partner is just through life. If you're going to get married, you've got to find the right partner that you want to be with for the rest of your life. And when you choose a partner in the film business to make a movie, you're married to that partner or those partners for life, because that product exists forever, and certainly throughout your lifetime. And you're going to be connected through statements and forever I'll be connected to Gravity and John Turteltaub and all those people that were part of MEG, and they really became part of our family. Like we picked everybody because in this business there's so much downtime, right? Like every day of shooting is, you get like if you're lucky, you get like 3 minutes you get 3 minutes in the hard drive every day, or 4 minutes. So the rest of that is downtime, and all of that is about you're hanging out with the people that you're working with, and you're getting to know them. And if you don't like hanging out with them, they are the wrong partner, and you know it from the beginning. So, and Belle Avery, my partner and my lead producer, visionary producer at MEG, she went through 5 years of 6 years, 7 years of going back and forth to China to find the right partner. There was, in the irrational exuberance of giving money, there were plenty of partners to give money to make MEG that wanted to be the partner and wanted to give money and wanted to have the distribution. But picking the right partner became more important. There was not a lack of opportunity, and Gravity, CMC's Gravity, really wound up being that partner, not only because they were actually in the business of marketing and distribution, and Wayne Zhang, who ran the company at that point in time, was a marketer and distributor of studio product, having worked with multiple companies, including Edco and Sony, that they were the right partner they were willing to bring the financing, but they had the distribution, and they had co-production knowledge. So finding the right partner, whether it's film or television, it's every part of
or anything else, right? So we certainly have some philosophers here, and thanks for the life advice. You want to add to that?
I just want to add something. This is a plug for Bennett's organization for East West, so I can get a really good home equity line, a good rate on my home equity line. I'll come by on Monday for that. But I have to say that working with East West, we did a film that was a very complicated Canadian, French, Chinese co-production, and Bennett's Bank was the only one that was able to do. We had to do for the bond company a bank takeover letter. Well, you go to a Chinese bank and you say, hey, by the way, this American company has the right to take over this Chinese bank account. And they're like, well, hold on. And that's I don't think so. And I think that's really unique, where you get very smart lawyers and bankers in a room and they solve a problem. That was a hurdle. We had kind of gone down a road. So it's not just your partners with regards to your producing partners or who you're developing or financing, but your relationships, all the way up the chain.
Yeah, certainly. That's why we're sitting on the sides of the stage safeguarding you guys today. Sorry, I interrupted.
I was just saying thanks.
That was very nice. Yeah, but I wanted to direct my last question to Chen Rong before we open this up to Q&As. So Rong, and as I mentioned earlier, I think a lot of people here the audience are filmmakers, and also our organization is dedicated to promoting young independent filmmakers, no matter they're in the creative world or they are going to be a producer independently. So I wonder what kind of advice you would give to them from your perspective of the industry.
Thank you. So I'm going to say something I never said in any other panel up until now. So when we made the strategy to invest in a US-based business, other than the business we have in China, one of the strategic initiatives we have, or had at the time, is to meet people like you. It's the Chinese filmmakers in US. I've never said that before because this is the best forum to actually say it. Which is why when I saw the opportunity to come onto this panel, in their materials sent to me, they said they have a monthly mixer of Chinese filmmakers in Los Angeles or California. I was very excited. So first and foremost, I came here to meet the filmmakers here, especially people who are Chinese, who may potentially grow up in professional expertise here and may even want to go back to China. So that's one thing I want to say. Having said that, I do want to share some thoughts because I've met many in China and even here. So number one, think of yourself as storytellers, not artists. Don't think of yourself as artist. There's a difference. Think about that. Second, as a corollary, think of movie as entertainment product, not art. There's a difference. Last, and we can talk more in the mixers, stay engaged and connected with everyday audience. Not just always hang out with your artist friend and small circles. You know, I talk to Uber drivers. 3 weeks ago, I was on an Uber ride, and my driver is a Mexican lady, and she cooked for 10 years for Sinatra. Talk to the clerk behind a local deli, the one that runs the cash registers. Stay connected with everyday people. Find the extraordinary story out of the ordinary. Do not just be an artist. And we can talk more.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think you're always saying do not just be an artist for the sake of being an artist. I think we should all pay attention to the society around us, the community. Is there anyone who wants to add something to that, or otherwise we can open for a Q&A?
I can just add a few cents here. I think first of all, we're like me personally as well. I think a lot of you guys from Asian families have Asian parents. Growing up, choosing to be a filmmaker, to study film is already a brave step that you guys took. This is very important, and now the door is open. You know, we talked about it just now that Crazy Rich Asian Success actually opened the door for more stories to be told by you guys. So stay in this industry. Only when you guys stay can our voice be heard and can this door be kept open. So let's not wait for another 25 years before we have another film like this. And another thing is that a lot of my fellow panelists touched upon this as well. But it's very important to be nice to the people that you work with. It's very important to choose good people that you work with. And it's very important because Hollywood or Chinese local film industry everywhere is the industry is a small circle, it's a small village that your reputation matters, the people you work with matters. So support each other, mentor each other, be there for each other, and let's do this together.
Yes, the thing I just wanted to add is nothing about being an artist. I have no idea what he's talking about. It sounded great. But I follow trends. I take a look at trends, what's happening. And in my first year, I think really being involved in U.S.-China was 2011. And the big story that year was on piracy, all right? And so when's the last time you even heard that word other than thinking of Johnny Depp and Pirates of the Caribbean? But last year, all everybody wanted to talk about is, you know, why do all the co-productions fail? Well, no, everybody stopped talking about that now, right? So now you got co-productions at work. And last year is always, you know, how come we can't have, you know, Chinese, you know, themed, you know, movies, you know, that work without having to bring up Janet Yang's movie from like 100 years ago. No offense, Janet, if you're listening to that. I mean, come on. It's like Andrew McCarthy was in that movie, you're crying out loud. Anyway, now you have Crazy Rich Asians, right? And that ties into another thing. And on the first question that you asked about, you know, kind of like what's happening in China and kind of the politics of everything, there's going to be a shortage of movies in 2019 in China. And you're starting to, in fact, when we were on that panel the other day, and I was like making those wisecracks, and then I look in, I don't know if it was Screen or Deadline, had that start like, oh God, I hope I just didn't create like all this kind of like gossip or stories. Luckily, it didn't even mention us. It was like other people talking about it. But you know, I don't want to say tax havens, but like the kind of birth of the happened either through Qingdao or Xinjiang. You know, kind of on hold. Everybody's kind of staying away from that. It's changing the economics of movies. With actors and the tax, you know, situations that are going on, everybody's going, well, I don't feel like making a movie this year. I don't want to be in the news. I don't want to get paid. So there's going to be fewer movies, fewer Chinese movies. I think, next year. So I think we'll see an opening up of imports. And I wouldn't read into that other than you got to stock the shelves for next year. But the real big question, and we mentioned this last week, earlier this week as well, is that there's very strict rules for TV dramas in China. And TV dramas in China are awesome, and they're really, flying amazing things happening. You guys know more than I do, because I don't, right? But that's not an import vehicle. So that's the kind of the trend that I'm following for 2019, is where is the production going to come from in China at all the different mediums, either film, TV, web series.
Thank you. I think you leave a great question for all the audience and every one of us. So because we started this panel a little late, we still have a second panel coming up. So I would like to open the panel to one question, but after that you can all come out and talk to our panelists. Is there anyone who would like to ask a question?
My discussions with Chinese filmmakers and also Chinese film school students about the obstacles to making quality films for global distribution, inevitably the issue of government censorship and worse, or they would say worse, self-censorship comes up. You think that's an overstatement?
Is that a question? Is there a question for them to answer?
Yeah, is that an accurate, are they accurate, or is that an overstatement?
I see. Is there anyone who would like to take that question? Or do you want to specifically ask anyone?
I don't pay that much attention to censorship. In the United States, 1950s, there were problems, I guess. We had a lot of censorship here for many, many, many years. And Ozzie and Harriet couldn't share a bed. No one else knows what I'm talking about, but I know you know what I'm saying. And Lucy and Ricky. But you know what? He was playing the convent drums all the time. It was annoying. But these are better jokes last night, I'll tell you. But look, in China, I hear from directors, artists, they talk about it. From a commercial perspective, I don't pay that much attention to it. I'm probably the wrong person to ask, but in terms of what I'm seeing, I think that Americans, tend to talk about hating censorship, but we're also so thin-skinned.
Okay, Randy, something to add?
Yeah, I think it's a gross generalization. I think that the film business, the Chinese film business is growing up, and the filmmakers are starting to tackle far more sensitive topics that are parts of storyline they're not the storyline, but they're part of an overall movie. I haven't seen Dying to Survive yet, but I can't wait. I wish that I had...
we co-hosted a screening of that.
Yeah, and that's a very sensitive topic for any culture, to be perfectly frank. And yet, and even in the Chinese culture, it would seem to me that this would be, how in the world would the government allow this to come out? Because it's almost a condemnation, not necessarily condemnation, but it's something that the government should have known about and dealing with. And guess what? It's actually, not only did it come out and it did well, but it's fostered a discussions that in the government, where the government is, from what I understand, is making changes because of it. So I think that your statement / question is a gross generalization of something that is past, and that there are filmmakers now who have the understanding and the tools to communicate sensitive, potentially sensitive topics within movies and television entertainment, to do it in a way where it can foster a communication and an open dialogue and hopefully foster change, which is something I can say is far better than what I think Hollywood or American filmmakers are doing, because they're just running away from it, to be perfectly frank.
Yeah, thank you for the question, and thank you, Randy, and everyone. So we're going to continue our discussion outside the conference room. So I would
Thank you.
thank everyone who made it here today.